Hey there, everyone. Jessica Ramesch here. I am International Living's Panama Editor, and I'm coming to you today from Panama City, Panama, where we are still under lockdown and have been for under our current quarantine for all of April, all of May, and now part of June. So I was just actually thinking about how wonderful February was before all of this started here. And I got to thinking about the best time to visit here, my favorite time of year here in Panama. So I thought I'd share some information with those of you who are hoping to plan trips maybe late this year, maybe early next year. If you're thinking about visiting Panama, there are two different ways you can go. If you're trying to scout it as a place to live, you might want to come here during our extended rainy season so that you can see what that is like in whatever region you like here in Panama. Generally speaking, our rainy season starts off really softly in April, which can still be really sunny and pretty. Actually, we see the sun almost every day, regardless of whether it's the dry season or the rainy season. And May, it'll start to rain a little bit more. Typically, if you're on the Pacific coast, or even in the mountains, that'll mean an hour or two of rain, and it's very predictable. It's usually 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., really easy to plan your day around. And it stays that way typically until August, and that's when we start getting our heavy rains. If we have 2 or 3 gray days in a row, it'll usually be in the August through November rainy season. But for a lot of people who are coming here for the first time, they just want to come when it's the sunniest, the most beautiful, the easiest, which I can certainly understand. My favorite time of the year, most everybody's favorite time of year, is our summer. Of course, because we're so close to the equator, our seasons are flipped. So it starts getting beautiful in December. We start having that really just long days of beach weather. And then January through April tend to be our summer months here in Panama. And my favorite month is February. But I'm going to get back to that in a second. Let's talk a little bit about the climate during the summer months. On the Pacific coast and in the mountains in Panama, you tend to have almost no rain, zero rain, and you tend to have really bright sunshine. Just when you see those picture postcards of that beautiful tropical destination, that is our summer here, whether you're in Panama City or at the beach or in the mountains. Now, just keep in mind, though, that the Caribbean side of Panama doesn't obey the same weather patterns as the mountains or as the Pacific coast. So on the Caribbean coast of Panama, places like Bocas del Toro, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with, you have, basically it can rain any time of year, and sometimes you can count on it being a little drier in February, March, September, October. But it's the Caribbean, so you'll have days of sunshine and then a couple days where it's rainy and then a couple days where it's sunny, and it tends to be that way much of the year. But I'm here in Panama City on the Pacific coast, and I spend a lot of my time in Pacific coast destinations. There's the beach town of Coronado, which is on the Pacific coast, and there are, of course, popular mountain communities like Boquete, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with as well. Now, our summer season, we have really cool events and festivals all year round, but our summer season is when some of my favorites take place. For example, in January, you have the Jazz Festival here in Panama City, and that's actually probably my #1 favorite event. There are lots of different concerts. There are lots of free events. There are $5 jam sessions that are really inexpensive. So if you don't want to spend a lot on a concert, which there are concerts that'll cost, anywhere from $20 up for a ticket. But if you don't want to spend a lot, there are free activities. There are talks as well, presentations, lessons. There's a scholarship program for talented Panamanian kids to go learn music abroad, study music abroad, I should say. And I like going to the $5 jam sessions. They tend to take place either early in the afternoon or late at night during they're not the most popular hours, but $5 and you get to really get up close and see the musicians, and they're just hanging out and jamming, and sometimes that's when the magic happens. So that's a lot of fun. If you're interested in planning your visit around that, you can look up Panama Jazz Fest online, and they'll have the schedule as soon as they know what they're going to be able to do this coming January. I'm sure they're already planning. Now, hi, Paul. Yeah, I love the wet season too. I love the weather year round as well. I like the cool rainy days, and I see the sun more than 300 days a year, so I'm pretty set. That works for me. Now, the Boquete Mountain region has its own jazz and blues festival, and it's usually completely sold out very quickly. People talk about it and say it is one of the best festivals anywhere in Panama. And actually, the expat community has been instrumental in getting that going. Very grateful for that in that area. I actually have always wanted to go, but it usually takes place around the same time that we do our one big Panama seminar here in Panama City every year. So I haven't been able to make it yet. We'll see later on if those schedules diverge, if I'm able to make it up there for that. One of my favorite festivals in that mountain region is every January. There's a flower and coffee fair. And it is just stunning. The flower displays that they put out in Boquete are amazing. You can see them just walking around town. You can buy tickets a few dollars to go walking amongst the gardens. And of course, the Boquete region of Panama is known for its coffee. In fact, I don't know how many of you guys know this, but Panama's coffee is known as one of the best coffees in the world. And a lot of that coffee comes from, not all of it, but a lot of that coffee comes from the Boquete region. So, for example, the geisha bean coffee, I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but it's one of the most expensive, most prized coffees in the world, is grown here in Panama. People are very proud of that. But I don't spend all that money on expensive coffee, just the regular brew, regular coffee grown here, I absolutely love. There's a brand called Cafe Ruiz. RUIZ, which is my favorite, super affordable, dark roast, really delicious. So I'm being asked about some of the negatives, not anything specific marked there about negatives. Of course, every place has negatives. There's no place on earth that is perfect. Panama is perfect for me, but it is not perfect. If anybody finds a perfect place on this planet, you let me know. But I traveled a lot of it and haven't found one yet. Some of the downsides here, if you're living in the highland regions, for some people the rainy season does get to be a bit much. Some people will talk about the wind actually being an issue. I don't find that it's an issue for me, but for some people, some of those regions are too windy. It is also very wet. I lived for a month in another mountain region in the pretty mountain town of El Valle, which I'm very attracted to and go to very often for weekends, particularly during that glorious summer time of year. And I was thinking about moving there. I'm always thinking about moving there because it's close to the city, so I can still see all of my friends, have access to the nightlife and the shows, but then have those beautiful mountain vistas and that slightly cooler climate. But it was very damp, even though we got a lot of sunshine, and the expat community there is small, but the friendliest, most welcoming expat community. I mean, they're all fantastic, but I've never made friends as quickly as I did personally in El Valle. But in the end, it was a little too wet for me, and it's just the kind of humidity that you have to, if you really want that lush rainforest mountain climate, then you have to be okay with the fact that you can't own a lot of leather unless you're keeping it in an air-conditioned or special storage. Otherwise, things go moldy, that sort of thing. I had a pair of boots that went completely fuzzy while I was there in El Valle, and I managed to salvage them with a little warm water and alcohol rub. But, you know, it's just one of the things that you have to deal with living there. It was nice, David. I actually really enjoyed it, and though I've decided not to live there for now, I'm still kind of attached to Panama City and all of the cultural events and activities here, but my mind keeps going back to El Valle. So we'll see. You never know. I'm keeping it in mind, and if I decide I want to move there, I can always do that too. So Robert, you may have missed, we were talking about dry season being, starts off in December, but really kicks in January, and then can last through April, depending. This year, April was pretty rainy. My favorite month, as I mentioned, is February here. Um, and like I say, I see the sun more than 300 days a year. Typically, our mornings are always very sunny, even if it's going to rain for a couple hours in the afternoon during the rainy season. But I actually just turned in an article for International Living magazine in which I talked about something that really I feel has been helping me get through this super strict quarantine we're under here, which was that every February here in Panama, I kind of have this glorious working staycation. And what I do in February is, instead of taking a vacation and stopping working and leaving Panama, I just decide that for February, I'm going to spend whatever I want to spend and spend as much time out of doors, even if I'm sitting and writing, which I really enjoy anyways, and that's my main occupation. So every February, this has been my tradition for a few years now, I will go out in the morning. No, Rod, Panama City isn't very windy usually. You might have a couple windy days in the year, rainy season when it's stormy, but not very windy and not a lot of hurricanes. So every February, what I'll do is I'll get up, I'll go for my walk maybe early in the morning or maybe later in the afternoon, maybe both. I like to just be outside the entire time the sun is up. So usually sunrise, sunset here, it's about 6:30 a.m., 6:30 p.m., no matter what time of year, again, because we're that close to the equator. And then I'll go somewhere to work that either has an outdoor patio or big windows so that I can enjoy that sunshine. And I treat myself in February because it's my staycation. So I don't worry about, for that month, I don't worry about spending the money. I just go wherever. And then I'll usually pack up my computer once I'm feeling a little stiff, like I need to walk and stretch and enjoy being outdoors again. Then I'll go walk again. A lot of times I'll walk all along the Cinta Costera, which is this bayside promenade along the Pacific in Panama City, and it starts in the sort of ritzy-looking financial district where you see all those beautiful skyline photos are generally taken from this part of town. And I'll walk all along the water, enjoying the sun, usually when it's a little bit cooler, 4 p.m. or later. And I'll walk all the way into the colonial sector. It usually takes me 45 minutes to 60 minutes, depending on my starting point, walking at a leisurely pace, short legs. And I'll walk all the way into colonial Casco Viejo with my laptop. And then there's a little cafe that I found there, and I looked really hard for a place that met all of my criteria, somewhere I could plug in my laptop and sit outdoors and have really good wine and have delicious, healthy food. And I found it. It's a place called Casco Mar. I'm waiting for them to reopen so that I can go back there. And I'll set up my laptop, and as soon as I sit down, they're bringing me over my glass of really nice wine. And I'll sit there and work until it's dinner time, and then order dinner. Then if they have live music, I'll hang out for that. I usually send some photos to my friends, and if they get jealous or feel like they want to join me, they'll come and have dinner with me or maybe a drink with me if they're able to make it out. And then I typically end up going home after dark, and I'll usually at that point take an Uber home. And that's what I do almost every day of February. And this past February was glorious. It was just so beautiful every single day, like every February here. And I really feel like after we got our first case in March and went into our strict lockdown at the very end of March, beginning of April, I had stored up I had recharged my batteries and had this amazing month where I had treated myself and gotten, all of the sun and outdoor time. And I really felt like it gave me the resilience to get through this. So we have a few more questions here. We've been to Bocas del Toro 2 times for a month each time. Last time was 6 years ago. Has it changed a lot? I have seen a lot of changes in Bocas del Toro. I don't want to mispronounce your name, so I apologize if I am. Uh, what I found changed in Bocas, though, was for the better. It's been cleaned up a little bit more. There's a really wonderful, widespread attention to keeping Bocas green and clean and really taking care of that beautiful natural environment. So when I went to see different houses, little cabins for rent, I saw a lot more places with things like solar and composting toilets and water tanks and people just using the water that they were able to reserve. So I feel like Bocas is just getting better and better, which is really amazing because one worries with popular Caribbean towns that they'll start to be overrun. But for now, Bocas is still our little secret. How expensive is it to rent? Rod, you can rent homes depending on what part of the country for anywhere from, generally speaking, $600 to $1,200 a month. A lot of people in Panama City will pay more than that. Rents have gone down a little bit in the past few years, though, and I do expect them to go down a little bit more at the end of this crisis. And if your places, little colonial rural towns like Las Tablas, there are people there renting for as little as $400 a month. So it depends on what part of the country you're choosing. Thank you, Doug. I'm glad I pronounced your name right. Okay, guys. Well, if there aren't any other questions, from New Zealand, Bruce. Hi from New Zealand. Bruce, a lot of people do speak English here. Typically, your white-collar Panamanians will have either, intermediate to advanced English, and there are usually, no matter what town you go to, English speakers who are not local who will come out of the woodwork to help somebody who's struggling and is trying to communicate. You should not expect your average blue-collar worker or taxi driver or cashier at a shop here in Panama to speak English, so you will need your numbers, a few directional words to take taxis if you're going to do that, or Ubers, and you'll need to be able to communicate with people in shops about, how many dollars, how much does that cost, that sort of thing. But most people who do not speak Spanish find it really easy to get their start here because there are a lot of people that are willing to come out and help. Usually, if somebody's struggling, the person in line behind them will help them out if, for example, the person at the pharmacy doesn't speak English. Hi, Bruce. Mark, what about the political and social economic environment there? Well, Panama is very politically stable. As far as the economy, we have had one of the fastest growing economies in the region. Even though it has slowed as of late, we still are expected to grow. Obviously, with the current crisis, we are expecting a dip, so all of the predictions for through 2022 are going to have to be modified a little bit, but that's the whole world. So, but they're still predicting that we'll be able to come out of it very strong, among the 3 strongest countries in the region. Socially, Panamanians are really accustomed to seeing foreigners, so I find that it's a really comfortable environment. There's no look of resentment if I'm out with friends speaking in English, and it is a land of opportunity. This is a place with a growing middle class where anybody who works hard and wants to make money can really do that. So current crisis aside, because we're all under quarantine right now and not being allowed to go out to work, but generally speaking, this is a place where anybody can make it. So there's not that resentment against the wealthy that you'll find in other places. Stipulations on how much income not to stay here for a lengthy time. So Rod is asking whether you need a certain amount of income to stay here for a certain length of time. Well, if you're from the US or Canada, you can stay for up to 6 months on a tourist visa. There's no income stipulation, but you do have to show proof that you're here as a tourist, which means a ticket showing that you're planning to leave here at the end of your stay, and you do have to show proof of solvency, but generally speaking, we're talking like $500, nothing major. If you want to become a resident under the pensioners or pensionado program, you need to have a pension of at least $1,000 a month. And if you do not have a pension, you can apply to Panama under the Friendly Nations program. Okay, well, you guys have had some really great questions. I'm so grateful that you joined me here today. wherever you are in the world, I hope things are starting to open up and feel more normal. I hope you're doing well and staying safe and taking care. Wish us luck here in Panama. We are trying to get our numbers down so that we can have return to some semblance of normalcy. I'm holding it together. Like I said, I had that beautiful February and a beautiful March as well, so that's kept me going, and we had a break in quarantine for about 5 days in June, so we'll see when things let up again, but until then, I will keep you guys posted, and thank you again. Take care. Bye.